Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Brazil once again for the first time in what seems like absolutely ages. Now, as I've told you before, Brazil has an incredible beer scene these days. They've got some awesome Imperial Stouts, some really nice New England IPAs, and extremely unusual fruity juicy sour beers that are most definitely worth checking out. So if you're watching from here in Europe, I really recommend that you check out beerdome.nl. They import a load of Brazilian beers as well as things from other Latin American countries. And you will not be disappointed if you get some of these beers. They are a little bit more pricey, but as I say, you will not be disappointed with these. So check out some Brazilian stuff and some other Latin American beers if you get the chance. For this review though, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. The last beer I had from these guys was pretty incredible. This one is the same style, but it's a slightly different sub-style. So I have to say I'm quite curious to see what it's going to have in store for us because it is a sub-style that I very much enjoy. So let's see what we have with this one then. For this review, we are going to head to the state of Ceará, to the city of Fortaleza, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Cervejaria Artesanal Elementos. So the 5 Elements artisanal brewery, if we translate that name into English. But this particular beer is called the BG Dark Pirate. It comes in at 12% ABV, and this one is a Russian Imperial Stout with coffee added into the brew, and then it's aged in rum barrels. So the last beer that I had from Cinco Elementos was the Abyssal, and I believe that was just a kind of straight up Russian Imperial Stout, and that was pretty damn awesome, I have to say. So like I said, this is a style that I know this brewery can do very well. It's a style that is generally done very well across Brazil, so always cool to feature some examples of these here on the channel. And as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I do love a good coffee stout actually. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what we have. Massive shout out as well to Alan, my colleague from Bishop's Arms in this video. He knows why. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Cervejaria Artesanal Cinco Elementos. We will hopefully add more to that in the near future. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is hugely appreciated, and you can of course check out the playlists of beers from different countries. You will find this one in the Brazilian list of course, and hopefully we can expand that list over the next little while. But anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Cervejaria Cinco Elementos, and I do apologise for any bad Brazilian Portuguese pronunciations in this video. You know, the Portuguese is a language I'm not familiar with, and the Brazilian Portuguese, I believe, is a little bit different. But anyway, Cinco Elementos, as I mentioned to you already, are based in Fortaleza in the state of Ceará, down in Brazil, and the company was founded back in 2016 by a group of friends. So Wellington Alves was the main man behind starting the project, and he'd previously been a home brewer, but he had actually graduated in medicine and worked as a surgeon, and it was during a trip to Belgium before his residency that he first came into contact with craft beers. But a while later, when he moved back to Fortaleza, he encountered more friends who were interested in craft beers, and he was joined in the founding of the brewery by a few of them. So that was Abate Neto, Francisco Barroso, Eduardo Lima, and Ricardo Clodi. But they chose the name Cinco Elementos, or the 5 Elements, because of the 5 founders, and they also had in mind the idea of the 5 ingredients of beer. So this is water, malt, hops, yeast, and the brewing mind. And the first beer that they released was called Davi and Goliath, David and Goliath in Portuguese basically. And this was an American pale ale that was made first back in 2013, and it also paid tribute to Wellington's firstborn son. But at first they had 5 regular beers, and they won a number of awards for these in the early days, and they started off with an initial brewing capacity of 1,200 litres per month, and then in early 2019 they upgraded this to, they scaled up to 7,000 litres per month, and over that year they began experimenting with barrel aging as well. But over the last few years since then, they've been progressively scaling up the brewery capacity, creating new recipes, and just trying to distribute their beers further and further. These days they have a bar on site that has 14 taps. They offer brewery tours as well, and the brewery itself can be found in the Luciano Cavalcanti area, which is in the eastern part of Fortaleza. As of September 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 125 different kinds of beer, and like I said, they are one of the really respected craft beer names when it comes to Brazil. But yeah, that is all I can tell you about Cervejaria Artesanal Cinco Elementos, the 5 Elements artisanal craft brewery. And yeah, if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on their social media, and you can of course check out the other reviews that I've done from these guys before. So yeah, that's everything for your brewery history section. Let's get on and actually have a look at the beer itself. So as you can see here, the artwork is quite simple, but I think it goes together really quite well, I have to say. So I guess I'll need to try the original BG Dark Pirate at some point. I got this one on Alan's recommendation, and as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I love a good Imperial coffee stout. But here on the side you can see the Cinco Elementos brewery symbol. It would be cool to have that on the bottle cap. Actually, it is just a plain cap there. But yeah, this one is brew. As I said earlier, it's a Russian Imperial Stout. This one coming in at 12% ABV. It's aged in rum barrels, and they've also added some coffee from Frank's Ultra Coffee Company. It's their Ultra Blend, I believe. And Frank's Coffee Company is a local coffee roastery in Fortaleza. But yeah, that is everything I think we need to say about this beer. It is a half-litre bottle, incidentally, and yeah, that is quite common to get beers in that sort of measurement from Brazil. But without further ado, let's get this guy open and we'll get on with the tasting. The BG Dark Pirate Coffee Edition, 12% Imperial Coffee Stout with Frank's Ultra Coffee Blend, and then aged in rum barrels. So yeah, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there. Let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. Oh man, look at that. It's been a while actually since I've sat down and just enjoyed a bottle or a can of Imperial Stout, and you know, this is an absolute monster. So yeah, my Sunday afternoon is going to be quite enjoyable, I'll say that. So yeah, this looks pretty damn good. Yeah, nothing surprising about the appearance of this one. So you can see that this beer, we've poured incidentally about, a bit more than 2/3 of it, maybe about 80% into the glass. But you can see this beer poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say kind of dark tan head there. You can see there's a lot of nice kind of little foamy bubbles there, but that is just fading away to be a very thin foamy layer. And when it's a 12% Imperial Stout, you would kind of expect that. The higher you go in the alcohol scale, the less retention you tend to have on the head. The head incidentally has just faded away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer, but you do have a nice kind of ring around the edge of the glass there. But in terms of the colour of this beer, I mean, I think it's fair to describe this one as a sort of dark ebony rosewood colour. Not much in the way of visible carbonation. You can see one or two bubbles just going up toward the bottom of that head there, but it does look very nice. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the glass around the edges there, but it certainly looks pretty great, I have to say. So yeah, remember the colour of your beer depends on one, the type of malts that you use. The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in can affect the colour of the beer too. But when it comes to Imperial Stouts, you know, it tends to be the fact that you've got a lot of black malt and things like that in there that determine the colour. The rum barrel aging isn't going to do much to that either. But yeah, this is one of the blackest and most opaque Imperial Stouts I've seen in a long time actually. Yeah, and these beers often do tend to have very long wort boils. And just looking at the list on this one, it also says it contains cacao in it as well, which should be quite interesting. But yeah, big dark ebony rosewood coloured Imperial Stout. There is nothing surprising about that at all. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we go. It looks awesome. Oh yeah, that is an absolute monster of a beer. Now, there's a few things we need to think about when it comes to this one. So we've got rum barrel aging in there. When it comes to the actual flavour of the beer, whenever you barrel age a beer, you tend to sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours. So I'm going to be really curious to see how this plays out when we actually taste the thing. But when it comes to the coffee beans as well, coffee beans are one of the most kind of fascinating adjuncts that you can put in beer. They're almost like hops actually. They depend... there's just so many different aspects to them. So depending on where they're grown, the different water and soil profiles are going to affect the flavour. It's all about the mazel as well, the metres above sea level at which the coffee is grown. So apparently the higher in altitude you grow coffee beans, the more likely you are to get like aromatic and fruity flavours out of them. And of course Brazilian coffee and other coffee from South America is very, very well regarded across the world. I'm not a big coffee geek. I actually don't drink coffee, but I love Imperial coffee stouts because the coffee bean just gives you such a depth to the flavour and aroma and stuff like this, and you get that straight away with this beer, which is why I mentioned it. So yeah, this one is definitely very, very infused in terms of its aroma. There's a lot we could talk about here. So yeah, backbone of the beer, you can absolutely smell a little bit of that kind of woody note from the rum barrels. There's a little bit of vanilla, and of course you've got that kind of sweet sugarcane, brown sugary sort of thing. On top of that, you can smell a little bit of a roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust. There's absolutely some kind of brown, sort of rye bready notes in there. You can smell quite a leathery brown sugar for sure, and that indicates that this beer has had a long wort boil. You know, with Imperial stouts like this, you're talking at least a 6-hour wort boil, if not more. Quite a few breweries leave them on overnight to let the wort kind of boil away or bubble away, to caramelise the sugar, so you can smell that big leathery brown sugary note to it. Lots of nice kind of woody elements as well. You can smell a little bit of the like a kind of cocoa nibby dryness, and when we're talking about the kind of cocoa in this one, I would say it's quite a high percentage cocoa, you know, a sort of 80%ish note, because you're getting a lot of these kind of fruity notes off it too. But I think that works together really, really well in this one. The coffee bean, of course, is just going right through this beer. So for me, the coffee bean that you're getting out of this one, it comes across as being quite aromatic, very, very light roast, but for me, very aromatic, and a lot of kind of, it has quite a bit of a red fruity character to it. You know, it's got a bit of raisin, it's got a little bit of kind of plum and things like that to it, a lot of red fruity notes. But yeah, aromatic, red fruits, and just a very, very light roast in my opinion. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this beer is awesome. The malty side of things is absolutely beautiful in this one. It's got everything you would expect of a big Imperial Stout. And when we consider it as a Russian Imperial Stout, it is worth pointing out that this is not the most kind of roasty, toasty and bitter one that you're going to come across just because of the aroma, and that's probably due to the barrel aging. On the hoppy side of things with this beer, there's certainly a little bit of earthiness in there. You do get a bit of grassiness and a wee bit of floral character, but again, because of the barrel aging, a lot of the hoppy notes will have dropped out, and I'm not sure. I think this one is saying it's bottled in February 2021, so it is a year old. We have to keep that in mind too. But yeah, there is some hoppy character there, but not overly much. You've got some lovely fruitiness to this beer as well. Big, sharp, raisiny notes, some juicy plums in there, and you've also got a bit of that black currant and slightly more tart blackberry kind of note to it. But yeah, figs, raisin, plum, and then yeah, an oily kind of figgy character underneath. Beautiful smelling beer, this one. We wouldn't expect any less of this brewery. But as I always say, take a wee bit of time just to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. This one's got a lot going on, and the more that you smell of this one, you start to get more and more from the coffee bean in it. I'm starting to get a little bit more of a kind of earthy and more roasty, toasty note out of it, but it's awesome. This beer really, really is very, very good actually. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the aroma. Let's crack into this one and see what we have. So this one is the BG Dark Pirate Coffee Edition, a 12% Russian Imperial Stout with coffee added into the brew, and then it's aged with rum barrels. This one comes to you from Cervejaria Artesanal, Elementos, from Fortaleza in Ceará, down in Brazil. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh. This is an interesting one for sure. This beer is all about its aftertaste, and yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like giving a good bit of attention to the aroma in the videos, because some of these beers take a little bit of time to open up, and you can tell that with this one. As it warms and as it opens up, it's going to show you different aspects of the flavour. But what I'm going to say about it straight away is that is an awesome beer. If you like a nice big bitter coffee, if you like an old school Russian Imperial stout and a little bit of woodiness and tobacco-y flavour, this one is really going to hit the spot for you. That's an awesome beer. But it's on the drier side of the Imperial Stout spectrum, that's for sure. But yeah, I'm just going to say, well done to Cervejaria, Artesanal, Elementos. They've done an awesome job with this. But I was impressed with the Abyssal that we had from them before, so it's not too much of a surprise how good this beer is. So yeah, you won't be disappointed if you get one of these. And these beers, they'll cost you about €10 a bottle, something like that, maybe a bit more, on beerdome.nl. And that mainly, the price for that mainly is because of the imports and things like that. So yeah, the import tariffs, because of course the EU doesn't have a trade deal with the CONMEBOL, what's it? I forget what the South American Confederation's called. But yeah, this is awesome. This is definitely worth trying if you get the chance. So yeah, the first impression of this one, it's big and silky. In the beginning, you can feel this one feels to me it feels a lot lighter than some of the other Imperial stouts that we've had from Brazil in the past, but I suspect that's due to the barrel aging. As I said earlier, with barrel aging, you sacrifice a bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours, but this beer has a hell of a complexity to it, and you're going to get more and more of that the more that you drink of the beer. But let's try and break this one down for you a little bit and describe what's going on. So, middle third of the palate, the backbone of this beer, it gives you that lovely roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust backbone, but underneath that you do have a little bit of that smooth, oaky character from the rum barrel aging. So there's a bit of competition going on in the very backbone of the beer. So I think the wood actually sits a little bit underneath. If you go toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of the vanilla, but you can just feel a little layer of that kind of sugarcane rummy quality to it, which is interesting. But yeah, the well-fired bread crust, like a well-fired breakfast roll, that certainly sits on top of that. Then you've also got a layer of a more crisp, kind of brown wholemeal bread coming out of this. Maybe rye bread, actually, you could describe it as, because there is a degree of kind of sweetness to it as well. So yeah, the wood, the little bit of kind of sugar cane, brown sugary note from the rum, well-fired bread crust, and then a kind of rye bready layer. I think that's kind of how all of it goes together. But then in that middle third of the palate, of course, you're getting that kind of leathery brown sugary layer. And there are elements of there are little bits of tobacco coming out of that as well. I mean, when you first take this beer in, within that bready layer, you've got this kind of tobacco-y type flavour. I will be straight up and say I don't really know what tobacco tastes like, but I love the smell of it. We used to play with that in the lab when I was studying chemistry. The smell of tobacco was awesome, but I've never ever smoked in my life. But the flavour you get in the middle of your palate, mixing in with that bready note, really is quite tobacco-y. But on top of that, there's a brown sugary layer to this one, and it's actually quite a toasty, well-fired brown sugar. But it's not madly thick and syrupy, if that makes sense. So that's quite interesting, because that in a way contradicts what I said earlier about there being a long wort boil with this beer. But then again, you have to remember barrel aging is at play, and that can change the whole thing. But yeah, you definitely get on top of that kind of brown rye bready tobacco-y layer, there's some really nice there are some really nice kind of just toasty brown sugary elements, and as you go into the dead centre of the palate, you do get a little bit of a straight up sweet caramel. I don't really get much in the way of biscuity character with this one, But the thing you'll notice with this beer is that when you go toward the back of that middle third of your palate, that's when you really start to get the coffee bean showing its head in this one. And yeah, I really do like how that comes out in this beer. So I think we can focus on that. I think the only other thing I'd say about the brown sugar is it surprises me how kind of roasty and toasty the base of it is. But like I say, you've got a sweet caramel note sitting in on top of that. Yeah, it's really good. Oily, sweet, kind of dense caramel in there. It does have a little bit of that treacly note to it, but yeah, as you move further out from it, it gets a little bit more biscuity, and then you've got that roasty, toasty brown sugar underneath. But like I say, the coffee flavour sits on that border region between middle third of the palate and back third of the palate. So let's focus on that. The coffee bean that's in there, you've got a hell of a... It's got a lot more earthiness to it and a lot more dry roastiness than the Aroma would have you believe. But what I was saying about there being a floral element to it certainly holds true, and you've also got that little bit of red fruity character as well coming out of this one. So yeah, you get a little bit of a kind of plummy raisin. You almost get a little bit of a raisiny sharpness out of the coffee bean in there, which is really interesting. So I do like how all of that goes together. That's the most complex part of the palate in this beer, is that middle third of the tongue, and it's showing you some really, really interesting characteristics. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about that middle third of the palate. Let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the base of that back third of the palate, the woodiness gets a little bit drier. On top of that, you've got more of that well-fired bread crust, and it's even more bitter. You've got a taller layer of that kind of sort of brown rye bready note that I was talking about as well. So there's a lot of that coming out in this one. Then on top of that, you've got some kind of yeasty elements in there, which you can pick out. And the yeasty elements it's a little bit more of a kind of woody, bready character that you're getting there. But certainly in that in that back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit and squashes together. So I really like how all of that goes together in this beer. The malty and yeasty side of this one is just awesome. I really, really like it. Yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about that. So let's focus on the hoppy side of the beer then. Yeah, hoppy side of the beer is very, very nice. In the back corners of the palate, you've got this roasty toasty. You have this big roasty toasty, earthy character in there, and that forms that just gives you a nice little bit of base of bitterness. But as you move further forward, it's a little touch herbal, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more sort of floral and things, so you do get a little bit of that there. But round the front curve of the palate, it's a bit lighter and more grassy, in my opinion. But the green, as I say, because this beer is barrel aged, the Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward style. The hoppy character in this one is a bit subdued, but I'm surprised at how much floral and grassy note that it has. I'd be very curious to know what hops they've used in this. Maybe a bit of Columbus or something like that, because it does have a little touch. You can just detect a wee hint of spiciness in that floral character, which would be an indicator of Columbus. 12% alpha acid, American, big spicy character, usually a bittering hop in West Coasters. But yeah, that definitely is interesting, and it sort of complements the earthy, roasty character that the coffee brings into the equation. But yeah, that's the green component. A little bit of grassiness, a little bit of floral note, a little bit of earthiness. On the front third of your palate and the fruity side of things, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get this little bit of a chocolate brownie thing, and the base of the beer is a little bit smoother and a little bit more woody, and you can detect a wee bit of that rummy brown sugary note. But on top of that, you've got that big oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer, and that comes across really nicely in this one too. And yeah, the fruity side of this beer is quite interesting. It's quite red fruity, but at the same time you get some of these more kind of dry fruity notes to it as well, which I very much enjoy. Yeah, so at the back of that front third of your palate, you've almost got a little bit of a base of like a datey, kind of pruny type thing there. On that back half of the front third of the palate, there's a bit of a datey, pruny base, but on top of that, When you take the beer in, you get some sharp raisins and some more juicy plums. As I say, datey, pruny note there. And as you move further forward, you start to get a more kind of juicy, figgy note on that front third of your palate. And then the base of the front third of the palate is a little bit more kind of black curranty. I think that's definitely fair to say. Yeah, definitely a bit black curranty, but then on the front tip of the tongue you get a lot of blackberry coming out of this one. It really gives you that big juicy blackberry note. But the fruity side of this beer is awesome, and the kind of coffee that they've chosen, really, the coffee really shows you some of that kind of red fruity character as well. So everything in this beer just fits together very, very well. And I do like the fact that it's a Russian Imperial Stout. There's so many kind of pastry stouts and things out there these days, and that's a style that I've never really quite gotten into in the same way as I did with these old school Russian Imperial Stouts, or the Imperial Milk Stouts. Even if I want a sweet stout, I'm a lot more inclined to go for an Imperial Milk Stout, something like this. But this is absolutely lovely. It's a big, big thumbs up from me. So yeah, Cervejaria Cinco Elementos have done an awesome job with this. Yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the flavour profile of this one. Let's round it off with a look at the mouthfeel then. Yeah, mouthfeel wise, I would say that this beer, it's kind of bottom end of full bodied. The carbonation is quite smooth. Again, it's quite silky. It's certainly not the thickest of Imperial Stouts that I've come across, and I've quite often found that Brazilian ones are very, very thick, but then again, we're spoiled in the Nordic countries. I think it's very difficult to beat the mouthfeel that we get in some of our Imperial Stouts up here. But yeah, quite a silky Imperial Stout, this one, I think, due to the barrel aging. In terms of IBUs, you know, this one has a fair whack of IBU to it. It did say on the bottle that it's 80, so we know it's that. I actually think I would have guessed a little bit lower than that. I probably would have thought it was 60 or 70, to be honest with you. But as I've always said, IBU counts are one of my weakest points when it comes to beer reviewing. As we said though, the malt base and yeasty character with this one, it's got a lovely kind of smoothness underneath. It's got quite a bit of leathery character to it as well, but also a bit of roasty toastiness. The Russian Imperial Stout side of this beer definitely shines through, but you do get a bit of sweetness. The coffee bean really evolves and gives you some nice sweet notes, but also big kind of a bit of dryness too. So this one definitely shows its drier side as a Russian Imperial Stout, and it's got a good, but it does have a good bit of sweetness to it at the same time. And the fruity part of this beer is very interesting. Some dried fruits in there, but some sharper red things too. But overall, this is a really awesome beer that's going to test your palate and make you think. And once again, from Cinco Elementos, it is very, very well done. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. So yeah, this is the BG Pirate, a 12% Russian Imperial Stout with coffee added into it, and then it's aged in rum barrels. Another awesome Brazilian beer, and like I said earlier, I'd highly recommend that you check out some of these if you get the chance. So yeah, let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Cervejaria, Artesanal, Cinco Elementos, and hopefully we can return to these guys at some point in the very near future. Until the next time, slange it, skull, cheers, and see you very, very soon.